release every perception we have of ourselves and every addiction we have of other people perceiving ourselves a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
And that's why humility is one of the reasons why humility is difficult, as we'll talk about later.
Yeah. Okay, we've kind of led into another point on this list. So I think if we go to that now, which is about God's love can only flow into my heart when I'm willing to be as I truthfully am. And you've already started to touch on that a little bit.
Did we miss the point though?
Yeah, I was just going to come back to it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
Are you happy to do that?
Sure, I think the next point though flows on from the previous,
okay,
perhaps.
Let's leave that one and go to this one then. So the next one then is God's love flowing into my heart depends upon my willingness to take responsibility for, experience and release fully, without reservation, all the error within myself that prevents God's love from flowing.
Yeah, I think the reason why I wanted to mention this next is because if you look at the previous one, it was talking about having a passionate desire of developing like if we're humble, we will have a passionate desire to feel everything. This one's having a passionate desire to take responsibility for everything.
Yeah, which is different, isn't it?
Which is different in a way. It's like it's sort of like one is having a passionate desire to feel everything. One is taking responsibility for everything we feel. You see, quite often I see what a lot of people do with their emotions is they want to blame other people all the time, for their experience. Now, while our environment has played a large part in creating all of our emotions, it's impossible for any of those people who even created our emotions to actually release them for us.
Yeah.
And this point honours that.
Yes.
A person who is humble knows that only they can actually take responsibility for everything that's in them now and actually go through the process of desiring to release everything that's inside of them. A person who's truly humble doesn't say, oh, well, that person created my emotion, so I'm going to wait until that person's all sorry about that. Because at the end of the day, the person who's truly humble knows that even if the other person is sorry, and even if the other person has completely repented and they feel terrible about what they've done, unless I take responsibility for the emotion that's in me, it's still going to remain in me.
Yeah.
And if you're truly humble, you'll come to realise that it is pointless waiting for anybody else to change when you are the only person who has the power to change you.
Yeah.
So it's pointless waiting. If I'm truly humble, I will never wait for somebody else to say they're sorry before I change, before I forgive them. I will never wait for somebody else to have some, revelation of truth that causes them to change and treat me better before I forgive them for how they're already treating me.
Yeah.
I will always firstly address my own emotions because I know that if I'm humble, I have to know that only I can actually take responsibility for the feeling of my own feelings and my own pain and my own suffering, and in fact all of my own feelings, including my own joys. Like I often see people who are not very humble wanting other people to share in their joy as well.
Yeah.
See, that's the mark of a lack of humility as well. But the reality is we can sit and watch a sunset and feel all this joy without having to share it when we're truly humble. Because we're fully engaged in our own experience. We take full responsibility for our own experience. We're not addicted to another person sharing it with us.
Yeah, there's a lot in that, isn't there? Like, often we're waiting for validation, aren't we? Permission to feel.
Permission to feel, validation. We often cannot feel joy without somebody else feeling joy along with us.
Which is really about validation as well, isn't
it's
it?
really about, but it's also about their joy heightens our joy, so it's about an addiction to their joy rather than actually feeling the experience itself.
Yeah.
So we're addicted to the joy of them feeling the experience rather than just feeling our own experience.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things in that are about a lack of humility. When we're truly humble, we will feel our own experience without expecting a single other person to share the experience.
Yeah.
Because we know that only we can feel the feelings of our experience.
Yeah. And I see that people, when it comes to personal pain and suffering, things that have happened in our life, I see that people can get, myself included, get caught on two sides of this coin.
Mm-hmm.
One is where we want to blame, we want the person to change, acknowledge they were wrong, and then we'll feel like we will feel, which is a bit of a fallacy anyway, isn't it?
Very much so, because when you go through all of that, you still realise that inside of yourself you still haven't felt it, and inside of yourself you're still going to have to go through forgiveness, and while it might be a touch easier now that the other person's felt, you've now made your entire relationship with God dependent upon this other person changing, which is in a very humble place with God, because God's saying, I want a relationship with you. And you're saying, I only want a relationship with you, God, when this person's sorry.
Yeah.
And God's going, why would you wait till then? That might be 1,000 years' time. Why do you want to wait till then before you have a relationship with me? Why not have a relationship with me now?
Yeah.
And we go, because I'd still want that, because we're too arrogant to go through the emotion of forgiveness, where we actually forgive the person for what they've done. And we no longer, and we work through our own experiences enough to do so that we can have this relationship with God. Then our relationship with God is completely independent of our relationship with anyone else. And if God is number one in our life, shouldn't that be the case? If we were having a relationship as we are, and I was saying to you, I've got to wait till my son Caleb approves of you before we can have a relationship. Now, Caleb does, but if that was just an illustration. But I have to wait until Caleb approves of you before I have a relationship with you. Then what if Caleb spends 25 years rejecting that? Then I'm going to spend 25 years rejecting you. Now that would demonstrate to you that Caleb has more importance to me than you do.
That's the priority system.
That's the priority system.
Again.
And so what we're often demonstrating to God, we often say, God, I want a relationship with you. And at the very same time we're demonstrating to God that we're not really sincere about that, because we actually want the relationship with this person and that person and this person more. Right? Yeah. And that's not a relationship. A relationship with God is not possible under those circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that was the other side of the coin I was going to say. We can get caught in blame and demand that they acknowledge things, or justice. We want justice. And on the other side of the coin, I see that we can get stuck with no one else in my family system is acknowledging my pain. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it didn't happen. Even though there's suffering and pain inside of me, I feel like I'm not allowed to feel it, or it's wrong to feel it, it's disrespectful to feel it.
Or maybe it didn't even happen.
Yeah,
you've got all these emotions.
I should second-guess myself. Yeah.
But the reality is, if you were humble, you would just say, no, I have these emotions, and even if they're totally wrong, I still have them.
And I need to take responsibility.
And I need to feel them.
And that's the thing that I feel as you're talking about this, is that we're saying, where's God in our priority system? And then where's ourselves in our priority system?
Next.
Yeah.
So there's God in our priority system, and then there's ourselves next, because we have to honour ourselves enough to be humble. This is the beauty of humility. Humility teaches us that we must honour ourselves. That's the beauty of humility. Because when we're truly humble, we will honour our entire experience. We will actually feel our entire experience without resistance. That is honouring ourselves. And so true humility allows us to honour ourselves. Whereas arrogance doesn't allow us to honour ourselves. It allows us to honour the public opinion of ourselves, the facade.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay.